Planning Committee on Thursday the 19th of June. For the benefit of people in the gallery and anybody watching online, I'll make a few introductions. To my right is Stephen King, the team leader for major developments, planning advisor today. To his right is Solomon Ogutu, our legal representative today. Round the corner are Alison Minas and Stephen Shaw from West Sussex County Highways. They are here. They will not be making a presentation, but will be answering points raised by speakers or any questions that members have. To my left is my Vice Chairman, Councillor Sweatman. I'm Councillor Phillips, and in front and to the side are members of the committee who will be making the decisions today and asking the questions, and in the corner are members of Democratic Services who will be running the technology and taking the minutes for today. So we now move on to the agenda. Item 1, to note substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4A. There are none. Everybody is present today. To receive apologies for absence, as everyone's present, there are none. To receive declaration of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda, if members could indicate via the screen if they have any. Right, there are none. To agree by general affirmation the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 29th of May 2025. Are members happy that I sign those as a true record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. To consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business, I have none. So we move on to the substantive part of the business today. Items recommended for approval, the first one of which is DM 242704, land at Queen Victoria Hospital, Hackenden Lane, East Grinstead. And I'll ask Stuart Malcolm to make the presentation, please.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. We'll start with just drawing everyone's attention to the update sheet, first of all, please. Just a few updates on this first item. We've received an additional 14 letters of representation since the report was finalised and the numbers were put in to paragraph 4.1 of the agenda. So most of those letters are raising issues that have already been set out in paragraph 4.1. There are 2 or 3 additional issues that have been raised that weren't necessarily directly addressed in the report, and they're set out there with a brief officer response to them. Further down the update sheet, there's just a couple of sort of paragraphs that need to be sort of clarified, really. For example, paragraph 9.5 reference should be made to the TPO in the southern part of the site. Paragraph 10.5 reference should be deleted to detached dwellings. Paragraph 12.85 reference is just made to landscaping plans that were submitted by the applicant. And then paragraphs 12.145 and 12.146, they're issues that are already set out in the agenda before you, but I've had some supplementary information from the applicant on both of those points that are raised. Oh, and there's just an additional plan just to be referred to in the list of approved plans. That's the update. And the application itself, so recall this one was before members back in January last year. The application site is on the land to the west of the Queen Victoria Hospital up in East Grinstead. The site is shown by the red line on the plan, and it measures 1.5 hectares in area. It's accessed directly off Oakfield Way, which is just to the west here, rather than through the hospital to the east. So the site is located on the edge of the town, but is within the defined built-up area boundary of East Grinstead. So it's a rather colourful looking plan. This is the site constraints plan. Again, the site is outlined in red. It's largely undeveloped and previously consisted of woodland and scrubland, with being a pond in the southern part of the site. The site has recently been largely cleared of the woodland and scrubland that previously dominated the site as part of the preparatory work following the granting of planning permission last year for 30 units. Although the northern part of the site remains subject to the TPO, this is the square hatching before you. The TPO, as I mentioned in the when I was referring to the update sheet at least, there's a new one down the western side of the southern part of the site. Again, that's also demarcated by the same green hatching. More green hatching, cross hatching this time, up in the northeast, well, to the northeast of the site. This diagonal green cross hatching shows the ancient woodland, which is more than 15 metres away from the nearest part of the northeast corner of the site, which is here. So that's the ancient woodland outside of the application site. The bright pink line shows the public footpath, which runs just to the west of the boundary in the southern part of the site before it goes into the site and turns west along the access road that runs through the site, leads off down Oakfield Way there. This plan also shows the nearest neighbouring properties, with those on Beachfields to the north, Oakfield Way immediately to the west, and properties on St Margaret's Road are located beyond the garages to the west, and these are the garages here, and then properties on Elizabeth Crescent further to the south. I do have another plan, once this works. As members will have seen from the report, and of fundamental importance to the determination of this planning application is the fact that the site forms part of a site that is allocated for housing. Policy EG8 is a saved policy from the 2004 local plan, so forms part of the district plan, and as such, the development plan. This allocates the land shown on this plan for approximately 40 houses. Members will be aware that planning law requires that decisions are made in accordance with the development plan unless material planning considerations indicate otherwise. It's also important to point out through this plan that this application for 36 units does not cover all of the land subject to the allocation of 40 homes. The garages that are referenced a moment ago that are just to the west of the application site and the open space immediately to the south, these are within the allocation, so they're within the EG8 allocation, but they're not within the current application before you. This plan also shows the land to the north as being within the defined countryside, which is beyond the black line there, and is within the east, and to the east, is the area covered by policy SS6, which is an East Grinstead neighbourhood plan policy related to the hospital, and that seeks to ensure that new development does not prejudice the desire to protect the hospital, whilst also supporting new hospital facilities. So I've got an existing site, well, when I say existing, I say previously approved site plan on the left, and the scheme before you is on the right. So as well as the allocation, also of fundamental importance to determination of this application is the fact that planning permission was granted by this committee in January 2024 for the development of 30 homes on the site. And this is obviously therefore a very important material planning consideration. And as I said, this is the 30 house scheme which was approved, and this is shown on the left-hand side. So the application before committee today seeks full planning permission for the development of 36 houses on the site, with these being a mixture of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom homes. The proposed scheme is shown on the right-hand image, with the location of the homes shown by the black outlines with pink shading. And the red line, I'm not sure how well it shows up on the images, but if you can see the red line, for example, just where the cursor is, the red line shows the scheme as permitted. So it shows this scheme, basically. So it just helps to illustrate what difference there is between the two plans. So the key change in that respect, and to accommodate the additional 6 units, has been to what were 6 detached dwellings up in the northern part of the site here, with these now becoming 6 pairs of semi-detached homes in largely the same positions. So that's the key change. There's a couple of other sort of minor changes to some of the house layouts, just changing around the precise footprint of them. But the key change, and one that facilitates the additional 6 units, is to those 6 detached homes, but basically turning them into 6 pairs of semi-detached. So of those 36 houses, the applicant is providing a 40% policy compliant level of affordable homes to be secured in the legal agreement, with this equating to 15 units, and these are shown hatch blue on the plan here. So the 40% figure derives from the specific site allocation requirement, so that's EG8, which I referenced a moment ago, rather than the general affordable housing policy of the district plan, which would require just 30%. So as before, and as per the allocation requirement, the existing access point onto Oakfield Way, which is down on the western side, will be utilised to create the permanent access to the site, and this will be for both pedestrians and vehicular access. Then when one would enter the site, there's 3 pairs of semi-detached homes which are located immediately along the northern side of the new access road, close to the entrance into the site. I should say at this juncture too that the private access route to the rear of the hospital is to be retained along this new access road. You can see it disappearing off to the east here, and that will have spurs off to the north and to the southern parts of the site too. So within that northern part of the site, a modest U-shape arrangement of 8 pairs of semi-detached homes is located, so 16 homes in total. These complete the development in the northern half of the site, with these located around a small area of open space which centre on a retained tree. A pedestrian link is also being provided to the northern boundary in this location to potentially facilitate access across mid-Sussex land and further to another footpath that's located slightly further to the north. Down in the southern half of the site, there is a further pair of semi-detached homes located just to the side of the access road, and then 2 modest apartment blocks with 6 units located in each block. Car parking is being provided for each of the units, and a number of visitor spaces are also included, and a total is provided of 80 spaces across the whole site. Okay, so this is the landscaping. As members will see from the photos in a moment, the site has been cleared, which I referenced a moment ago as well, in accordance with the tree removal and retention plans that were approved under the previous application. So this is the current landscape plan that shows the tree retention largely around the site edges, around the boundaries. So this is the northern half of the site, and this is the southern half of the site. The detailed planting plan shown here are considered acceptable by officers and will be secured by condition, along with tree protection measures for those trees that are being retained. So unlike the previous application, there is a statutory requirement for the applicant to provide BNG this time, but like the previous application, the applicant is looking to deliver BNG on land immediately to the east. So it's not possible to deliver the 10% uplift on the application site alone, so the applicant has therefore identified this land to the east, which is within their control, and that's shown by the green land here, immediately to the east and to the north of the hospital site. The council's ecological consultant has confirmed that the applicant's BNG submissions are acceptable, and the relevant provisions to secure this will be through a combination of conditions and the legal agreement. The same consultant has also confirmed that there are no objections in respect of the impact on any protected species, with precautionary measures, mitigation and enhancement being secured through condition. And in terms of the on-site enhancements, these include bird and bat boxes, the installation of bee bricks and insect towers, and some hedgehog-friendly fencing. So just moving on to highways matters, which are obviously a key issue for members to consider, particularly bear in mind the comments from the locals, which are clearly sort of quite contentious in that respect. So I've got the junction layout on the left to show you, which is exactly the same as that approved under the application last year. It shows the existing wall on the footpath has been removed at the entrance point, which is being 4.8 metres wide before it widens to 6 metres further into the site. The priority access arrangements for traffic into the site is also to be formalised at this point. So the plan on the right shows the development has been supported by tracking plans, with this image also showing the 80 parking spaces being provided across the site that I referenced a moment ago. As with the previous application, and again evident from the representations received, that the highway's impact is a major issue for local residents, with much of the concern focusing on the safety impacts on roads in the immediate vicinity. The application submissions have, though, been robustly assessed by our highways colleagues at West Sussex who are here today, and they have visited the site to see the access arrangements themselves and the local circumstances. So just going through some of the main issues in highways terms. So paragraphs 12.48 and 12.49, which are on page 29 of the report, they reference the concerns about the impact on Blackwell Farm Road, and make clear that it's also acknowledged by the local highways authority that there is an issue with on-street parking and verge and footway parking taking place at busy times. It is, however, also recognised by the highways authority that this is an existing issue, and it's important to reinforce the point to members that an assessment must be made of the impacts of this specific application. It is also recognised that Blackwell Farm Road already has parking restrictions in place at locations to protect the highway from unsafe and obstructive parking. Members will be well aware that a new development cannot be required to resolve existing issues. In this case, the professional highways advice is clear that this proposal for 36 units will not raise a highway safety concern based on the impact on local junctions or by contributing to parking on the roadways. So paragraph 12.44 of the report sets out why the lay-by and mini roundabout, as referenced in site allocation EG8, are no longer required. This is because since the policy was first drafted over 20 years ago in 2004, residential street design and best practice guidance has changed, primarily with the introduction of the Manual for Streets guidance document in 2007. Under this more up-to-date guidance, such measures are now no longer required to make the proposal acceptable in planning terms. This is the same position that was accepted when the previous application was approved, and our current application is, just like the previous one, looking to secure some local pedestrian access improvements around the site. And that's up at the junction at the end of Oakfield Way. As is clear from the report, it is a material planning consideration that permission has been granted by this committee for the development of the site for 30 homes. The applicant's technical transport submissions accepted by the Highways Authority show that this increase in unit numbers of 6 will result in AM and PM peak trips raising from 17 to 18 an hour. Highways officers have confirmed the effect of these extra trips under the new application is not expected to trigger a significant delay at a junction or cause an issue in cumulative capacity impact terms. The overall conclusion is that there are no technical objections or reasons to refuse the scheme that is not considered to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or result in severe cumulative impacts on the operation of the highway network as set out by the NPPF. Just got a few elevations now to show you. I won't take too long on these. So this is starting with the houses in the northern part of the site, which are plots 1 to 6 on the left and plots 7 to 18 on the right hand side. These are all 2-storey in height. Next set of elevations, these show the remaining semi-detached houses, which in the southern part of the site, and plots 90 to 24, and the apartments, well, this is the southernmost of the 2 3-storey apartments. So as before, in terms of the materials, a traditional pallet is to be used with Freshfield Lane brickwork and plain tiles on the roofs and at the first floor on the apartments. Overall on design, officers consider the scheme is at least equal to the previous scheme in design terms. In terms of residential amenity, the applicant has designed the scheme to respond to the neighbouring properties, and they're designed or located far away enough to ensure that significant harm will not occur through overlooking, loss of privacy or loss of light. This is the same conclusion that was reached under the assessment of the previous application. I've got a few photos or images to show you now. I'll just finish off with these. So this first image is more historic image taken from Street View, which shows the site entrance at the end of Oakfield Way. So just to get your bearings, you're looking into the site here. You're at the end of Oakfield Way, looking east into the site along the existing access road. And the garages that are outside of the application site are off to the right-hand side here. The next photo is from a similar point, but basically turned round, so you're looking back down Oakfield Way to the west. The next image is a pair of photos. This is the northern part of the site, where you'll obviously note the site has been cleared, as I've mentioned a couple of times already. The site's been cleared in accordance with the previously approved plans. So this image on the left is sort of taken from the eastern sort of central part of the site, looking west, back down the existing access track, back towards the site entrance, down into Oakfield Way. And the image on the right is from the same sort of point, but looking directly north instead. And this tree here in the foreground is that retained tree I mentioned a moment ago, where you can see the houses sort of forming a U shape around it. So the next images are in the southern part of the site, with the left-hand image looking east towards the hospital. These are the back end of the hospital here, just off to the east. And the right-hand image, again, is just shifted around slightly. This is looking south to the retained trees, with the pond located down in this area here. So that's all the images, but just to sort of in conclusion, planning officers consider that this is a good quality scheme that meets the relevant policy requirements of the site allocation itself, that being EG8, which means it is the council's policy to develop the site, as well as meeting the rest of the development plan policies taken as a whole. It's a material planning consideration that planning permission has been granted previously for 30 units on this site, and the scheme before members is a very similar in terms of design, albeit the total units now number 36. In accordance with the NPPF and in weighing up the issues as outlined in the report, it is considered that the adverse impacts of the proposal would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework taken as a whole. The proposal therefore benefits from the presumption in favour of sustainable development, and in these circumstances the NPPF states that planning permission should be granted, and the application is therefore recommended for approval based on the dual recommendation before you. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Stuart. Right, we'll now move on to the public speakers. I reminded that you have 3 minutes each. The time will start when you start speaking. I will try and indicate after 2 minutes that you've got a minute left, and if you're still speaking after 3 minutes, I would ask you to wind up in one final sentence, please. The first speaker is Kerry Henderson, so if you'd like to take your place.
This application is driven purely by greed. The revised plans show a development that will be squashed in with shared driveways and over-occupied size houses, with 4-bedroom properties on the footprint of 3-bedroom properties. There is no infrastructure to support this development, let alone the revision of it. No extra doctors, dentists, school places, parking spaces in town and at the station, or even actually food in the town's supermarkets. Highways seem to be under the misguided illusion that 36 dwellings will only generate 18 vehicle journeys. Please do not be hoodwinked into believing them. 36 dwellings will generate 36 to 72 extra journeys in a network that simply can't cope and has recently been affected by 3 accidents, one of which shut the entire estate for 1.5 hours because of its location. You need to listen to the real and lived experiences of the existing residents and not Highways. Additionally, the safety audit identifying a conflict between the egress of the proposed development and that of the garage block can't be ignored and can't be mitigated. By approving this, you would be supporting an unsafe situation that you could become liable for. Geotechnical investigations show that there is a safety concern with mobilisation of the clay at the top of the old quarry on the site, now a pond, especially now the trees have been removed. This could lead to subsidence and collapse of anything built within 10 metres of it, such as one of the apartment buildings. Again, if you approve this, knowing this fact, you are supporting an unsafe situation that you could become liable for. Each and every one of you were elected by members of the public, and I want you to keep that in mind as you listen. The planning officers will remind you that the site is allocated, like that makes it all okay and acceptable. Well, just because it's allocated doesn't make it right, and you need to keep that in mind. Your premise, first and foremost, should be to the residents that you represent, and that alone should be your first stance and first principle. Those residents are all experts in their own right. They know this development will cause safety concerns in a number of areas and have, with one very loud voice, told you very clearly that they categorically do not want this development, let alone the revision of it. That alone is where you should start from, nothing else. Please be assured that should you actually approve this application, over 400 residents will be giving all of you a Paddington hard stare because you clearly will have forgotten your manners and who you actually represent.
Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker is Barbara Marchant.
When this development was refused permission in 2006, it was rejected on the grounds of ecological damage, traffic chaos, intrusion into the countryside, massive road safety issues for the school children, inadequate access to the site, Oakfield Way being only 4.8 metres wide. What has changed over the last 20 years, apart from the NPPF regulations? The situation is exactly the same, apart from the traffic situation being twice as bad, the school being extended, and now we have a day nursery in use all year in the road. Parking down the road is dire, Highways expression, because they have no driveways. On the planner's report, there will be a 10% biodiversity net gain by destroying the woodland and wildlife. How? The current plans show back boxes to be installed on trees on the northern boundary of the site, on trees that no longer exist. No more bluebells, newts, dormice, bats, tawny owls or slow worms. How can this be a gain, and where is the mitigation? The traffic situation is very, very difficult, and Highways state that 80 extra parking places and 36 dwellings can't make it any worse. Really? The exit road, which is Blackwall Farm Road, has been blocked, as has been said, the last 6 months by accidents. The residents are unable to gain access to the A264 for hours. According to Highways, the new MPF rules state that the road now ticks all the boxes, so no grounds to refuse permission. It can't get any worse. The mantra is, if it's legal, we pass it, seems to be the norm, regardless of the welfare of the school children or the residents of the 500 dwelling cul-de-sac or the traffic chaos that will ensue. The junction with Oakfield Way and Blackwell Farm Road is still unsighted, and the road now has a day nursery. The possibility of a lay-by in Oakfield Way is a joke. There's no room for one anyway. The development already in progress at the bottom of Blackwell Farm Road and the A264 has already caused chaos, with the main road and roundabout blocked completely at school times due to inadequate access to the site. Where's the common sense? And why was a detailed tree survey done by Mid Sussex when there was wanton destruction of all the trees on the site? I was informed that planning takes precedence over TPOs and the developers were allowed to clear the site. What a waste of time and money. It was bad enough that this council saw fit to blight our lives with 30 dwellings and 75 parking spots.
Right, can you
but to
wrap up in
increase
one
this in
sentence,
insults.
please?
And I think the residents will have to live with the consequences of your decision.
Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker is Andrew Amy.
At 78 Blackwell Farm Road for the last 35 years. The site in question is visible from our house and directly only about 200 metres away. Thank you for inviting me to this meeting and giving me the opportunity to express my concerns, which are these. The woodland was previously a local amenity for people and wildlife. It consisted of mature trees and a pond and was used by youngsters who were kept off the streets and dog owners who wished for the local streets and footpaths to stay clean. We have a water shortage every summer, and due to climate change, this situation is predicted to get worse. Finding an NHS dentist or register with an NHS doctor is not easy. By far the worst aspect of this proposed development is the vehicle access. As the site is only accessible from Blackwell Farm Road, vehicles going to and from the site must navigate a road congested with parked vehicles. There's a primary school on Blackwell Farm Road, meaning that the road is solid with traffic each end of the school day. This means there are lots of children using the road among parked cars. At the south end of the road, cars are forced to park on the footpath, meaning that the available width of the footpath is too narrow for wheelchairs and children's buggies. The only way for them to use the road is to use the road, which is already only wide enough for one car. I note in the submission that this is regarded as an existing issue and the new development cannot be required to resolve existing issues. Nobody is suggesting that the new development will resolve this issue, only that it will make it worse. It is surely only a matter of time before a fire engine or an ambulance in a hurry can't get up the road and someone loses their house or worse still, their life. Do planners really want this on their conscience? This application presumably replaces the previous application for a smaller number of houses, but as local residents were not formally notified of the application, it was only by chance that my wife noticed it on a local group on Facebook rather than receiving a formal notification, as previously we had a letter through the door. Gives us very little time to react. Even if it's not, it just feels like an attempt to get things done through the back door.
Thank you very much. Now, those are the speakers against the application. Do Stuart or Natalie want to make any comments before we have the remaining speakers?
Thanks for the opportunity, Chairman. But
Sorry, not Natalie, Alison, sorry.
but I don't know, from my perspective,
Not yours.
there's no points of clarification that I need to make. Thanks, Chairman.
All right, thanks,
Back to
Stuart. Yeah, sorry, Alison, is there anything you would like to say on the highways issues?
Not at this moment, no.
Thank you. Okay. In that case, we will move on. And the next speaker is Natalie Gentry, speaking on the behalf of the developers.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Natalie Gentry from Macar Homes, the applicants. We're a small housing developer. We operate in the southern home counties, and we're really passionate about delivering quality family homes that are so desperately needed. As you're aware from the presentation, the site does already benefit from planning permission for 30 houses granted last year to another developer who was unable to actually build it. So upon purchasing and reviewing the permission, we actually saw that there was a declining demand for the larger detached houses and a very much an increased demand in Mid-Sussex for smaller semi-detached houses. So, as the presentation said, we're simply replacing the 6 detached houses with semi-detached houses, which results in the increase from 30 to 36. The site, as you already know, is, however, allocated in the plan, in the district plan for 40. So as you've already seen, the consensus and the proposed layouts are almost identical, just a couple of small amendments to some of the house footprints and obviously the splitting of the detached houses. We're very, very aware that residents feel very strongly about parking, highways, the loss of the woodland and construction impacts, and we're very conscious of this. County Highways, as you've been told, is satisfied that the additional vehicle movements from the small increase in the unit numbers will be negligible, and the proposed parking is in full accordance with the relevant policies. We will work closely with your officers to agree matters of construction logistics and management going forward. So as you know, the woodland trees that were already approved for removal last year were removed in the autumn of 2024 under the watching brief of an ecologist who was present on site every day to work alongside the tree surgeons. The proposed re-landscaping of the site will achieve the same quantum of biodiversity net gain that the previous planning permission achieved, which is through a mixture of some on-site landscaping and off-site woodland management to actually improve that woodland. Just to sum up, we're not just a developer, we're actually a house builder, and we are really proud of the houses we build and the way in which we do it. So alongside the application, we're already working on our technical and engineering packages required to ensure compliance with the building regulations, and we will be keeping residents very much updated on surveys taking place and the construction programme when we know it. The site team will engage further with local residents and Blackwell Primary School on the key milestones of the project and confirm all lines of communication so any issues can be reported and responded to. I respectfully request that you support your officer's recommendation and grant permission for the amended development so we can get on and build these homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the last speaker is Ward Councillor Margaret Belsey, if you'd like to come up. And I'd remind members and members of the public that the Ward Councillor is not constrained by the 3-minute rule.
Chairman has said, my name is Margaret Belsey and I'm a town and district councillor representing Ashplatts ward, where I also am myself a resident. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee today in respect of the application before us, which is the planning application for 36 houses off Oakfield Way on what used to be Queen Victoria Hospital-owned land. The site has been appearing before the council for decades now, and it is a very contentious site for our community. I have represented Ashplatts residents for many years and in respect of many applications for the site, and it is a site that I know well, having lived in East Grinstead for over 30 years now, and having served for some time as a West Sussex County Council Governor at Blackwell Primary School, which many of you will know sits on the Blackwell Farm Road, south of the proposed development. When I was a governor there, we tried to encourage children walking to school, but with the increase in number of traffic, cars, people coming in by cars, it is no longer encouraged because of the safety element for the children. Although I spoke against previously when an application came forward for 30 houses, it seems that 30 units is no longer enough for the developer. And an application has now come before seeking 36 houses on the site. The tree loss and destruction of a valuable ecological site has already occurred. However, that doesn't mean that extra dwellings should be crammed into the site. It further erodes the margins around the site. There are many representation letters from residents, all of which are against the revised proposals. It is very disappointing for the highways officer to say that there is not an unacceptable impact on the highway safety or on the road network. I should like to take the opportunity to remind councillors that there are already over 400 houses, all of which have to enter and exit their homes through the single point of entry and exit at the bottom of Blackwell Farm Road, where there is a junction with Holt High Road. Journeying up that road, as I did again this morning, you start off with the development of 10 houses already being built on the junction. Apart from construction traffic and parked vehicles, there are vehicles parked on both sides of the road, meaning traffic is having to crawl through the gaps. You then reach the school, which has vehicle movements all day long, from breakfast clubs and drop-offs through to pickups and after-school clubs. You then pass the junction of Hilda's Duke's Way. Another 35 houses were added some years ago, up to Hackenden Lane and Hackenden Close, and of course, Oakfield Way, a quiet cul-de-sac with just a few houses. We are now looking at another 36 houses. Please, can someone tell me how many houses one can add to the Blackwell Farm Road traffic before one says no more? When will there be too much of a strain on existing infrastructure? Whether it is okay to approve plans that cause traffic to gridlock? The traffic does gridlock. The traffic does gridlock. That caused the traffic to gridlock, and far from being walking and cycling paradise made out in the plans, it is actually one of the most dangerous roads in East Grinstead. I'm very concerned what will happen in an emergency when emergency vehicles are unable to get up and down the road. The predicted number of vehicle journeys just simply does not tie up to the reality of the situation, and there are already too many vehicle movements and parked cars on this road. Talking to residents, and as I have observed, there have never been any meaningful traffic improvements to Blackwell Farm Road. And it is time to say that with the existing infrastructure as is, we should say no to any additional houses along that road beyond what has already been approved. Thank you very much for your time today, and I should be very grateful for your support in refusing the application before you. For the reasons I have stated, which are supported by many residents and people here today that have submitted their objections. This is an application that needs to be turned down on so many safety and traffic ecological grounds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. Right, before we open the discussion to members, Stuart, would you like to make any comments on the speakers?
No, again, I'm okay, thanks.
Right, Alison, do you want to make any comment about the traffic movements?
Yeah, no, not at the moment, thank you.
Okay, fine. Right, in that case, I will open the discussion to members and invite the ward member, Councillor Peacock, to open proceedings.
Thank you, Chairman. Residents are obviously deeply dissatisfied with this application and also the previous approval for 30 houses last year. Many representations have been submitted, and given the previous approval decision, I will focus on the main issues as I can see them, namely highways and also bank slope stability and water supply, although Mr. Malcolm has already answered slope stability and water supply queries. I have a few clarification questions and also try to be succinct and to the point. Residents, and it's been mentioned today, have also raised ecology, and residents have many understandable objections relating to ecology, namely the felling of trees and damage to the ecosystem and the ecology locally in the habitat. Unfortunately, these works have been cancelled. These works have been carried out following the existing planning approval, and no significant changes or additional works are being proposed. Whilst the site is now subject to MSD's biodiversity net gain policy, and I know officers have been up to the site a number of times over the last year when residents have had complaints and issues about activities on the site, and officers have been up there. The main issue, I think, acknowledged by all is highways. Due to existing levels of congestion, capacity, recent accidents, one quite serious and it's well documented, and the dropping of long-standing road improvement scheme, namely the roundabout in 2004 from the local plan. Also, highways were unable to attend the last application meeting, and Mr Malcolm had to address highways questions, so it's very much welcomed highways being here today. My first two questions regarding slope stability and water supply are namely, Mr Malcolm, thank you for answering the resident's question re-subsidence, and you touched on it in the presentation today, re-digging within the 10-metre buffer zone of the pond bank. You've clarified that council raised no objections for the first application, and any issues can be addressed through the building regulations process. What is the process for monitoring stability once construction work begins? And if subsidence was identified, what would be the following process and implications? That's the first question. And then the second question for Mr Malcolm, re-water supply, again, you've answered the question, it's been mentioned. Objections have been raised citing this fact that developing in Horsham and Crawley have been refused due to concerns over water supply. For this application and the previous approval on South East Water had no objections to connection and supply. Am I right in saying that the issues in Horsham and Crawley relate to water table levels and a specific snail whose habitat and survival could be adversely affected should the water table fall below to a certain level? This issue only affects a small area of water supply. Mid-Sussex and East Grinstead is not affected. After Mr Malcolm replies, I'll come to highways, if that's okay, Chairman.
Yeah, that's fine. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor, for those questions. Yeah, all good points. I think we will start, if we may, with issue about water supply. So just in terms of what's different between us and Crawley and Horsham, the point that's raised there is that they're covered by a water neutrality issue, where vast swathes of their districts or their areas have to demonstrate that any new development is water neutral. So that members of this committee will recall one of the battery storage applications over on the western side of the district, which was we have dealt with 3 of them, but it was the first one that came before you. They had to demonstrate that any water use on their site was water neutral. So it meant basically bringing in sort of bottled water for all intents and purposes. So that is a very different issue that doesn't affect East Grinstead. But water supply is an issue that's covered by DP 42 of the district plan, but not to get that confused with the water neutrality issue, which does not affect this area. So in terms of the compliance of DP 42, there's already a small section on that, paragraph 12.145, which is what I referenced when I was referring to the update sheet. But we have had the supplemental comments by the applicant just confirming that they do have an agreement with South East Water to enter into contract with them to provide water for the site, and therefore that satisfies the development plan policy DP 42. So that's the response on water supply. In terms of slope stability, then this is a matter for this. Again, this is referenced at paragraph 12.146 of the report, and again supplemented by the point I made in the update when referring to the update sheet, that it's a matter that the applicant knows they have to address through the building control process. So therefore, it sits outside of the planning parameters. So in terms of that level of control, I don't want to give you an answer that isn't correct because it's not planning related, but it falls outside of the planning process and is covered by building regulations. But I think an important point to make is that the NPPF makes clear that it's very much an issue for an applicant, stroke developer, stroke landowner to manage, as opposed to a local authority. Paragraph 197 of the NPPF states the following. says where a site is affected by contamination or land stability issues, responsibility for securing a safe development rests with the developer and or landowner. So, yeah, it's very much putting the case over to the applicant, and it's something they're aware of. Their own report submitted with the application, their own geotechnical report. The summary at the start of that has got a comment on the slope stability issue. It says, slope stability may be a concern along the southern boundary associated with the off-site steep slope dropping down into the former quarry pit. So that is a matter for the applicant to address as they go forward and they come up with a detailed design as to how structurally they're going to construct their properties. I think that's all, thanks.
Thank you, Stuart. Would you like to go on to the highways issue?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I now turn to highways. I've got a number of them. Thank you for being here. It was a big loss at the last time, and Mr. Malcolm had to answer the questions, and I did want you there, and it's good to see you here today. I have to say the peak hour trip estimates look very low. I have to say that for additional 6 houses. What is the source of methodology for calculating these trip numbers and their robustness when you've got traffic and double parking on Blackwell Farm Road existing is a major issue? That's my first question. Second, decision to only consider the top section of Blackwell Farm Road in the safety survey and exclude the school, which is only a few hundred yards away. Why was that? Because in the past, when we look at the application that was rejected in 2004, 5 and 6, it was very much did take into account the school. And if I'm right, going through all the road safety surveys, it was an issue in the last application that was approved, it didn't actually take in the stretch of the school. It stopped a few hundred yards from the school further up Blackwell Farm Road. That's my understanding, and I do scratch my head when the school has grown. Thirdly, there have been a spate of accidents. Thirdly, there have been a spate of accidents in the last few months, one which is well documented. A car ended up on its roof. And have these been reflected and considered in Highways' decision? You know, one would expect that. It's a recent car ending up in its roof is quite serious. It's next to a school. Well, that's near a school, it happened. And lastly, Mr. Malcolm's already touched on the roundabout road improvement scheme, which was a key element of the previous 2004 local plan policy for the site and had been in place since the early 2000s, has been dropped. I acknowledge that road design has evolved over the last 20 years, but how does Highways conclude it is not now necessary when Blackwell Farm School, the day nursery, traffic congestion, and recent multiple housing developments in the Blackwell Farm Road cul-de-sac have all significantly grown, as has congestion since 2004. So they're my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would one or both of you like to respond, please?
Yeah, okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here. In terms of your first question about the source of trips, we use a nationally regulated database, so it takes, it's basically a national database that takes trips from all different sites across the United
Alison,
Kingdom.
would you mind speaking up just a little bit, please?
Yeah, sorry. So we use a database called TRIX, which basically takes trip information from lots and lots of different sites. So manual traffic counts, automatic traffic counts, and all of that information is put into a nationwide database. And then when developers want to assess what the impact of a trip of a development is going to have, they will use that database. So it's thoroughly tested, it's recognised in our industry as being robust. So that's where the data comes from. In answer to, did you want to? No. Yeah, so in terms of your question about the safety of Blackwell Farm Road and why that wasn't looked at, when a development comes in, they look at the impact on the road immediately outside the development. So for this one, the road where I think Hackenden Lane meets Oakwood Way and Blackwell Farm Lane, that was immediately looked at. It wouldn't, because of the size of the development, it wouldn't have been necessary based on those trip rates, which is just one trip every 3 minutes. So there wouldn't have been any additional need to have to look at any more further improvement works. So with this development, you're going, although the roundabout won't be put in place, and this kind of answers the fourth question, whilst back in 2004 there was a requirement as part of the policy, that policy was saved from 2004 and came over, but since then, things, as you said, things have changed. So we've now got Manual for Streets, which is a design guide, which came out in 2007, and that gives us information about how things should be designed based on the amount of traffic and pedestrians. So in this scenario, the roundabout for that number of trips is no longer necessary. However, what we will be putting in is improvements for pedestrians.
Can I just add something? Sorry. In terms of the question about the road safety audit, just to clarify and be 100% clear with committee, the road safety audit assesses the main element of the highway works, the access arrangements, but officers do assess the wider road safety implications of the proposals. So that can be done through reviewing accident records. So we've looked at the accident records to see if there's a pattern or an occurrence of incidents that are occurring that could be exacerbated by the proposals. So our check in terms of the last 5 years of data is that there haven't been any accidents on Blackwell Farm Road itself. There have been accidents at the junction with the A264, but on Blackwell Farm Road itself there hasn't been any. So we do review the safety implications of that, the wider implications of the area, and also through a site visit we will go and where there is a concern, and we will go and observe and see how the road network is performing. So the road safety audit just looks at the main element of where the main highway works are, but officers will look that further in the field and have a road safety assessment of the wider proposals. Just to make that 100% clear.
So the recent accident, let's call it an accident, that's the one that's well documented, quite serious, that has been taken into account then?
We may not have received the information before but we've looked at the most recent.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so when we look at the most recent 5-year data, so when we look at that, anything between now and when we looked at it would be in there. That wasn't in there, so it wasn't. But we don't think it was in there.
It's not clear because I'm not clear which accident you're referring to, where it was, or when it occurred, and there can be a lag from an accident occurring, the police recording it, investigating it, and then providing that information to West Sussex County Council. So we don't have immediate records of accidents. So if it is a very recent accident, it may not have been recorded in the latest 5-year accident records. But notwithstanding that, accidents can occur on any part of the network. We obviously don't want that to happen, and we try our hardest to try and prevent them and try and prevent the severity of them. But even if there has been a recent accident on this record, it wouldn't change on this road network. It wouldn't change our recommendation to committee today that we don't feel that there is any evidence to support a refusal on transport grounds for highway safety matters. Accidents can occur. They can occur on any part of the network, unfortunately. We obviously try and avoid that, but there's no evidence that suggests to us that this is going to be unsafe or exacerbate any road safety implications in the vicinity of the site. So our recommendation is to committee very much that it shouldn't be refused on highway safety grounds.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I think on this, I will be consistent with how I voted last time. All due respect to the experts, I take that. I think increasing congestion and the fact the school's there, it was considered a major issue 20 years ago. I think I will vote against this. I have been open-minded, look at all the facts. I recognise there's no evidence that could support an appeal at this moment in time, but I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. I've heard the comments from the residents, and as an East Grinstead councillor representing Herentide, I've lived in East Grinstead for well over 40 years. And I think I'll refer back to my previous comments on the last application that I know how horrendous the traffic situation is up there. And, I really feel for the residents, and, going back, also voted against, I think, or made serious concerns about the development at the bottom of Blackwell Hollow, which they're just starting to do the groundwork on, I believe. And also I did make comments about the junction improvements at the bottom of Blackwell Hollow. I think that's something that should be looked at. And I'm with you on a lot of those things, and I have made my comments and my serious concerns. But we sit here as a planning committee. We have to look at documents. This planning is quasi-legal. So you have the National Policy Planning Framework, the district plan, and obviously a neighbourhood town plan. And these are all documents that we have to look at. It's not just a wish list, just because we don't like an application, we can approve it or refuse it. That's not the case. We have to look at the documents and go by planning policy. I'm a little bit disappointed that the first speaker says that we councillors, don't seem to represent the residents of East Grinstead. For me personally, at Hill Place Farm, I worked with the officers and that got refused, but in the end got overturned by the Secretary of State. So we do work extremely hard for our residents, and as I've just explained, we have to look at planning policy. This application, or the previous one, that has already been approved. So from a planning policy point of view, when we look at this, what's here in front of us today, you can't go back and change things that has already been approved. We can't. I'd like to, but we can't. If it went to appeal, the inspector would just throw it out and that'd be the end of it. We have a responsibility to go by planning policy. I know you're shaking your head, but that's true. The only difference in this application is that you've got 6 detached houses, which probably, not saying nobody wants, but they're few and far between. They've actually made it into 6 semi-detached houses, which I know is an extra 6 occupancies. So that's more affordable housing for East Grinstead. The fact is, as Highways has said, and they got their own metrics to go by, which they've already explained, and sometimes we don't agree with Highways, as I probably don't agree with them on their findings on this, but we have to go by their findings, because again, the inspector would side with the competent authority, which is Highways. They say there's only 1 extra movement in AM and PM periods from 17 to 18. So that is the only real difference between the original plan and this plan today. And the fact is it's giving us 40% affordable housing. But what this application can't do, same as the last one, is improve the existing conditions, which are horrendous anyway. And we all know that. But the Highways have said there's no appreciable impact on this development on the Highways network. So unfortunately, we have to sit there or sit here today and make a decision on what we've said. Now, if the committee decided to refuse this application today, it'd still get built, because they go back to the old application and that will still be constructed. So I'll leave it there for the moment, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there is one frustration that we've had more than one application with highways, and I'd appreciate if they confirm the fact that highways cannot normally turn down an application unless the impact, the additional impact is severe. I think I'm correct in saying, and there lies the frustration because, you know, severe is a pretty extreme words to measure any impact against, and that is the case, is it?
Yep, the NPPF is very clear in that it's a severe residual cumulative impact on the highway network or unacceptable highway safety implications. That is the bar that has to be met.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I visited this site before the 30-house plan went to committee and had a look round, and obviously the southern part, or the part by the pond, was a really poor state of maintenance, the woodlands there, with lots of sort of drink cans and empty bottles and things obviously abused by some of the local residents using it as a congregation spot. And so it wasn't a very pleasant place to look at. I was also fully well aware of the strong feelings of many of the local residents. But it's always sometimes the case in any development close to a built-up area, you get the local residents who object. On the highways issue, I would defer to the expertise of the county council in terms of this particular development will not cause a significant effect on already a rather bad situation in the Blackwell Farm Road, especially at school drop-off and pick-up times and where you've got after-school clubs and breakfast clubs. If we look at this new development where you've got an extra 6 houses, I will certainly welcome the smaller semi-detached units, which will be less expensive and therefore more affordable for what is a desperate need for market housing in the whole of Mid-Sussex. Plus, of course, the extra 6 means we're going to get some more affordable housing in the allocation. Last time I voted for the application, and I think probably I'll vote for it again this time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henwood.
I have a question to do with the highways. First of all, when you do the trip analysis, presumably you do visit the site. So I wanted to know what provision is made for a uniqueness of a particular location. I mean, you're using your methodology based on universal, to statistics. You visited the site. I'm curious about, yes, and when you visited it and how you play into this uniqueness of a site.
Okay, can you hear me?
Just about.
Yeah, okay, I'll try and speak a bit louder.
Yes, please.
Their uniqueness. The data that we get, that is generated not by us, but by the applicant, and they use the TRICS database. Yeah, so the applicant would be the developer, the person who's putting in the application for the houses. So that information is given to us as the Highway Authority, and then what we do is we review it and we can check to see what types of sites are in that data set. So it's normally there'll be a range of different sites, but a lot of the time there will be similarities. There'll be lots of different sites, but there will be some sites that are similar to this specific site. And then what they do is they take all that data and they use that to then come up with the trip rates.
Chairman, can I follow up?
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious, if an applicant submits the data, how objective is the applicant's information?
Yeah, that's our role to review. So they go away and do the work, but then our role as the Highways Authority is to check, critique, review that data, make sure that it is you know, it is what it says it is.
Okay. So Chairman, could I ask the planning officer a couple of questions, please?
Yes, sure.
Planning officer, please could you show us the photograph you took? I believe you had two of the road, Blackwell Farm Road. Yeah, could you, yes, now is that the road that we're concerned about?
This is Oakfield, sorry Chair, if I can come back. This is Oakfield Way, so this is from the site entrance looking west down Oakfield Way.
So we haven't got any photographs of where this goes into the Blackwell Farm Road, which seems to be the one that's so very congested.
I haven't got any photographs of Blackwell Farm Road, no.
No, okay, okay. So a second question, Chairman. What schemes are being provided for this, for renewable energy schemes and for grey water recycling, please?
If I could just draw attention to page 44 and paragraph 12.139. So this makes reference to the applicant submitting a sustainability and energy statement with the application. There's a series of measures there. Primarily there'll be, in terms of sort of renewables, they're looking at air source heat pump technology to do. I think the previous application, they looked at solar, but I think that's been discounted as the detailed design has progressed. So there's a series of sort of measures, I suppose, that they're looking to implement, and that will be secured through a condition. We're happy with that. That's policy compliant.
Okay, so that doesn't answer my question. Air source heat pump, doesn't provide the energy. So I'm looking for, if the previous application was going to use photovoltaics, is this going to be using photovoltaics to produce the energy?
No, like I said, I think that's been discounted because of
Okay.
the site circumstances, and as the detailed design has progressed, I understand that's been ruled out by the developer.
Okay, so I would say that's very regrettable. And it's very regrettable there's no grey water recycling. We've already mentioned the idea about water resources, so this should definitely be on the cards for any development. Okay, I might come back again, please, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll stick to the relevant act of this planning application, which I think is very good, even with the additional change in the number of homes, and probably the same number of occupants, to be honest. So I'm quite happy with this application, and hopefully we can proceed to approve this in due course.
Thank you. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. East Grinstead is a growing and prosperous town, and I think the changes that the new developer are making to semi-detached houses is an improvement and will reflect local need and be closer to affordability for, we're of a privileged generation, most of the people in this room, but our children aren't, and our children need opportunities, and I see this as a site that will afford some opportunities. I, like a number of people in this room, would like to express my frustration with the response from Highways. The modelling methodology does not ever seem to reflect what local residents suffer and face and experience, and I think that's a statement that we would probably all agree to. However, given the previous approval of 30 houses, I find I'm happy to support this small change to 36. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Chair. It seems to me that we need to discuss a condition because there are 500 people living in a cul-de-sac, and that Blackwell Farm Road is just terrible during the drop-off times for the schools. So can we discuss a condition to do with the SEMP as to exactly when they would be able to come in with their building machines? That would be really important that they avoid, say, 8:30 to 9:30 and 3 till 4. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a condition in there, is there not?
Yeah, if I could just come back in. So condition 9, the construction environmental management plan. And I think this is the standard sort of condition, but I think it's specifically amended by this committee last time. Look at you, Councillor Whittaker, I think it was yourself. So we've got in there specifically one of the clauses that the applicant will need to meet when they make their submission is details of how construction and delivery traffic will avoid the primary school pick-up and drop-off times. So that satisfied the committee last time round, and we're proposing the same condition this time round.
Thank you. Is there any, Councillor Henwood?
Thank you for allowing me to come back. This is also to do with conditions. I'm just a little bit confused, page 51, condition 12, when it talks about prior to the development, more or less, we need to have a measure to improve air quality. Well, we talked about traffic congestion, nitrogen oxides. There's even a report on the impact on Ashdown Forest. So how can you assess, if you don't assess the air quality before, I'm questioning the point of this condition, how can you therefore assess it afterwards and think of mitigation? So thank you for that, planning officer. If you could explain that to me. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so this is a fairly standard condition now that's requested by environmental protection officers on as far as I'm aware, most housing developments, certainly of this scale. So since policy SA 38 came in as a development plan policy through the site allocations DPD, there's been this request for a scheme to demonstrate what can be done to mitigate air quality. And normally, one of the things we'd be looking at would be, say, the provision of EV charging points has been known to satisfy this condition. So it's something along those lines that we'd be looking for. As you'll have picked up from the report, the actual provision of EV charging points is something that will come forward through the building regulations process. But it may be that this is what the applicant chooses to do to satisfy this condition and make it clear that they're going to do that through the planning process as well.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for all the public interventions. Greatly appreciated. You can feel the emotion and tension in the chamber from members of the public, and that's understandable. It happened at the last application that was approved. So I fully understand that. I would thank Natalie Gentry for a good presentation as well, which crystallised all the points. Just one point that hasn't been raised, and it wasn't mentioned specifically in the officer's report. Technically, it's not a planning issue, but it is a relevant logistical issue. The proceeds of the sale of the site go to Queen Victoria Hospital. We've already heard that East Grinstead Neighbourhood Plan Special Policy SS6 promotes and supports the Queen Victoria Hospital in all its forms, and it certainly does that. So the considerable proceeds of the sale of this land will go to Queen Victoria Hospital. They have recently got planning permission for a new community diagnostic centre, which work will start hopefully fairly imminently in the summer. And I'm sure that the proceeds, when we look in planning terms at public benefits outweighing the negatives, the delivery of a new community diagnostic centre will be massive. So, I like the new design. I say hallelujah to more terraced houses, to 2 and 3 bedroom terrace houses. It's old-fashioned, old school, but I think it's a big step in the right direction and what we need. So I'm supportive, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. Do any other councillors wish to speak? All right. Just finally remind members that should they choose to reject this application, that the previous application would still be valid and still be built, and also that if members chose to reject this, we would need firm planning grounds to go before an inspector. Otherwise, this would be thrown out. And sorry, Councillor, Mr. King.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just as you were coming on to that point, I think obviously one of the main issues that's been discussed today is highways. And if we go back to the starting point, this is just to try and draw it together. The starting point is that this site is allocated in the development plan for approximately 40 dwellings. So that's the starting point in planning law with our considerations. And it's also highly relevant that there is a planning permission in place that can be built out for 30 dwellings on the site. So in terms of a highway impact, you are looking at an extra 6 units, essentially. And as we've said, and has been said by case officer and highways officers, the test in the MPPF is a high bar and is deliberately set as a high bar, as a severe impact. And I think it's clear from the evidence that we have that there won't be, it just won't be possible to demonstrate a severe impact from an extra 6 houses on the site. And on that basis, I would think that if members, were minded to resist the scheme on highway grounds, I think we would have very great difficulty at any appeal. And I think that might well be regarded as unreasonable behaviour, given the fact that the site is actually allocated for more units. We've also got to look at the benefits of the scheme, which is additional smaller units. I think we all know what's happened with the district plan, the position we're in terms of no 5-year land supply, and all that brings with it in terms of unwanted speculative development elsewhere in the district. So I think for all of those reasons, there's clear benefits from getting additional units on a site that is actually allocated for development. So I think that's all I wanted to say just on that point, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as there's no other speakers, I would like to recommend this for approval. And it's not because I like the application, I don't, and I sympathise with the residents. I'm making my recommendation purely on planning policy, and we have to do that as planners. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Right, Councillor Jackson or Councillor Prescott. Right, thank you very much. Could we move to the votes, please? Right, the vote is now closed. There's 11 votes in favour, 1 against, no abstentions. Therefore, passed for approval. I will, for the benefit of people watching online, read the recommendation. It's recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions listed in Appendix A and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the required infrastructure contributions, the biodiversity net gain requirements and the necessary affordable housing. Recommendation B, if a satisfactory planning obligation has not been completed by the 31st of July 2025, it is recommended that the application be refused at the discretion of the Assistant Director for Planning and Sustainable Economy for the following reasons. The proposal fails to provide the required affordable housing, the infrastructure contributions and the biodiversity net gain requirements. The application therefore conflicts with policies DP 20, 31, 38 and EG8 of the Mid-Sussex District Plan and the Mid-Sussex Supplementary Planning Documents, Affordable Housing and the Development Infrastructure and Contributions. I would just comment to members that one thing I did note was that they didn't give the normal 3 months for the Section 106 agreement. It's only a matter of weeks, but the reason for that is that as discussions were already taking place with the prior application on the 106 agreement, and there would only be minor amendments to it, it was felt that the shorter timescale was perfectly adequate. So that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the speakers. Please feel free to leave now. There will be a short break while we change planning officers. Yeah, thanks, Stuart.
Yeah, just.
Right, thank you very much for coming. No. We're going for it. Thank you. Right, we move on to DM 230504, Crawley Down Garage, Snow Hill, Crawley Down, West Sussex. And I'd ask Joe Swift to make the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to take members to the update sheet. We've just got additional comments from the contaminated land officer. They've just confirmed that ordinarily they would require a discovery strategy. As this is a retrospective, it wouldn't be enforceable as the work's already occurred. And on balance, they consider the continuation of the use and the fact that it likely remains suitable for its current use. They do not believe they could justify a phase 1 risk assessment at this stage. They do make a note that if they were to do further work, they would suggest a condition, but that's a matter of would be a matter for a separate application if they were to apply. The application seeks retrospective planning permission for the use of the site for vehicle storage and collection, the sitting of ancillary buildings, related works and infrastructure for a temporary 5-year period. The application site is shown here, outlined in red. It was previously used by APH as an off-airport car parking. As such, because of its previous use, the site is fully covered in hard standing to allow for the parking of up to 3,500 vehicles. APH has since relocated to a site closer to the A23, and they're no longer using this site. The application site is designated as being within the countryside. However, with the site being the reuse of an existing developed site and viewed in the context of the existing petrol station and Skoda garage to the north, as well as surrounded by residential dwellings, is not considered to form an isolated form of development within the countryside. The plan on the left-hand side shows how the site has been laid out. There is an area within the centre of the site which is designated as used for pick-up and drop-off of vehicles. The area located to the north is used for the storage of vehicles which are non-runners. Then we have this sort of central run of buildings which is used to sort of process the vehicles. Once they come in, they go through a wash, valet, and imaging before having an RAC inspection. And then the remainder of the site is used for the storage of the cars. With the change in the layout from its previous use of off-airport car parking with the additional buildings and pick-up and drop-off point, the site can now store a lower number up to 2,000 cars, which is a reduction. In addition, just to note on the plan to the right-hand side that not all of the site falls within the Mid-Sussex District Plan, within Mid-Sussex District. The line here, which cuts through, is the boundary, and the area to the north is actually within Tandridge. A separate application has been submitted to Tandridge District, which has been approved. So there are a number of temporary buildings on site, so I'm just going to quickly run through these. So I won't spend too much time on these. The first one is just the guard hut. This is located at the site entrance. We have a small modular office located in the site, a toilet block, an office unit, the inspection canopy. We have the imaging unit. The largest of the buildings is the valet building, a wash bay, and the container building. So you will note that all of these buildings are very temporary in their nature. The permission is only seeking consent for a 5-year period, and in accordance with condition 2, once after that 5-year period, the land is to be restored to its former condition or to a condition to have agreed with the local authority. And we have a few photos of the site. The first set is looking at the buildings. So we have the first photo here is showing the containers with the canopy. We have the second photo below is the entranceway. You can see just behind the wall, the guard hut, and obviously the other canopy to the rear. All the buildings are of a single story nature. And then again, an image of the wash bay, the largest of the buildings. And then we have the next set of photos. The first one is looking towards the eastern boundary. Below, we've got a picture showing the pick-up and drop-off space. This is quite a large space to allow for the transporter lorries to come in and turn on site. And then we have a picture, see the car storage and the southern boundary beyond. And then the final photo is looking towards the western boundary. You'll note from the photos that there's quite good screening along the boundaries. So the main issues are set out in the report. The proposal would support economic development and redevelopment of a previously developed site, and this is considered acceptable in principle, and it's in line with policy DP1 and DP14 of the Mid Sussex District Plan and policy CDMP 07 of the Neighbourhood Plan. The design, layout and scale of the development is considered acceptable. It is not considered to impact on the character of the wider countryside. Subject to the recommended conditions on the hours of use, a noise management plan, and the development to be carried out in accordance with the lighting impact assessment is not considered to impact on neighbouring amenities. In addition, the lighting is existing on site. We have put a condition on to restrict the hours of use, which is considered to result in an improvement over the existing and an improvement over the existing impact on the wildlife on site. We've got no objections received from West Sussex Highways, the Environment Agency, the Environmental Protection Officer, Contaminated Land, and the Council's Drainage Officer. It is therefore considered that the proposal is compliant with the development plan when read as a whole, and it is recommended that permission is granted subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Right, we have one public speaker, Paul Morley. If you would like to take that, and a reminder that you've got 3 minutes. I will try and indicate after 2 minutes that you've got a minute left, and at the end of 3 minutes ask you to wrap up in one sentence if you're still speaking. So when you're ready.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Paul Morley. I live in a property called Brookside to the south-west of the development. That is immediately at the bottom of the plan that you can see there. I am registered to speak in the opposition of BCA for the proposal of Crawley Down Garage. However, I wish to make it clear that I'm not objecting against the Crawley Down group as a whole. The existing business has demonstrated responsibility with some immediate neighbours, engaging with myself, local community, and providing local employment and economical benefit. So unlike the BCA, Crawley Down Garage is not a faceless corporation. Rather, they have established a locally established entity, which in my opinion has worked to maintain a fair relationship with its neighbours. So I'm not against them. My concerns are antisocial noise. I know that's not a direct concern of the planning, it's more environmental, but under DP 29. The proposal of the site is to hold approximately 2,000 vehicles and employ around 32 staff. There will be a significant turnaround of vehicles, raising concerns regarding the persistent noise pollution, car alarms sounding repeatedly throughout the day and night, creating continuous nuisance, disrupting the lives of the residents. By comparison, 2,000 cars is equivalent to a small village such as Turners Hill, where residents could reasonably address one another if there was a disturbance with another neighbour directly. However, with the BCA and the scale of the operation, this is neither practical nor possible. If the committee will permit me, I would just like to play you a couple of audio tracks.
No, sorry,
No?
we can't have audio tracks. I'm
Okay,
very
there is a
sorry.
lot of constant all
Yeah,
day
I'm very
long
sorry.
alarms.
If you can
Okay.
continue with your.
So, under clause 26, 1226, 1231, 1232 of DP 29, relating to noise, air and light pollution, the proposal requested the implementation of a noise management plan, as Joe said, which seems to have been ignored and
1
as
minute
yet
left.
has not been provided, okay, as I understand it. Until a clear and workable plan is in force, to a clear and workable of the enforcement noise plan is presented and agreed upon, the planning application, in my opinion, should not be approved. Secondly, the loss and dismissal of existing covenants, restrictions and covenants historically have been applied to the site for good reason, and yet they appear to have been dismissed for a temporary exemption without justification. These covenants have been put in place to protect local residents from undue disruption, and no substantial change in circumstances has occurred to warrant the removal of these temporary exemptions, setting a precedent that would erode those protections over time. I request again, I would urge the Planning Committee to withhold the approval from the BCCA until a noise enforcement plan, management plan is in place. Furthermore, I'd request a formal review of the existing covenants to ensure that they remain in place and protect the local residents and community.
Thank you very much. Hopefully members will have read a written submission from the owners of BCA, because the gentleman couldn't be here today, but I'm aware that all members were sent this, so hopefully they've had a chance to read that. I don't know if there's anything you want to come back on, Joe. One question, the resident did refer to covenants. Are you aware of any covenants on the land?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just respond. So the covenants are sort of separate legal matters. So if there's a legal covenant on the land, the planning permission would not override that. So it wouldn't change what we're looking at today. And just in terms of the noise management plan, I'd just highlight that we have condition 4 that requires within 3 months of the date of this permission, the details of a noise management plan to be submitted. Without the condition in place, this wouldn't have any opportunity to enforce against it. The idea of the condition is to resolve the issue of any car alarms going off, and gives us a position where we would be able to enforce if they weren't complying with that. Obviously, without the permission in place, we wouldn't have an enforceable position on that noise management plan. Thank you, Chairman.
And my understanding is that the operation will be restricted for 12 hours, but there will be someone on site in security for 24. Is that your understanding?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, so condition 5, there's a restriction on the hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and no work on site on Sundays or bank holidays, and that includes collections or deliveries to the site. So that would obviously mean that there's nobody working on the site. I believe that they do have security that is monitored on the site.
Okay. Right, members, anyone wish to speak or ask questions on this one? In which case, do I have a recommendation? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bates.
Now, actually, because the noise abatement was being discussed, we seem to be told on the site visit very clearly what the procedure is to disable the alarms from cars. So I think we have to go by what we were told.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members wish to speak?
I recommend approval, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Prescott. Right, could we move to the votes, please?
That's always good.
Oh, sorry, councillor Whittaker.
Sorry, just wanted, yeah, thank you, sorry, Chair. Just to clarify, just to try and reassure Mr Morley, I mean, you made, very cogent points about the noise. So you've just clarified it's a 12-hour operation. So does that mean that there are no deliveries, no transported deliveries after 7 p.m?
Indeed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Right, so if we could move to the vote, please. Right, the vote is closed. 12 in favour, none against, no abstentions. So the recommendation that planning permission be approved subject to the suggested conditions in Appendix A is passed. Thank you very much. There are no items recommended for refusal. Questions pursuant of Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Do you notice which have been given? I have none. So I thank members and officers for their attendance and close the meeting at 3:48. Can you just wait while the stream is turned off, please? Thank you very much.